Welcome back, happy crafters. I am so excited about our project today because we are making a wood flower box that looks like a Polaroid, and we're gonna hang it on the wall. You can look right here to see what it's gonna look like here at the end, but I'm excited about this project because it's something I've never done before. So we're gonna do a little chaos crafting and get into it together, but this is an amazing product to sell in your Etsy shop or your handmade business. These truly sell like hotcakes, and we're gonna learn how to make one today so that you can put it in your shop if you want to, or just make your home look a little bit nicer. Before we get into it, let's kind of talk about our instructions a little bit and how we're gonna be doing this project and what the flow is going to kind of be like today, because it's a little different than what I normally do. So we're going to be referring to our instructions here today that I got from Hydrangea Creations Co. I bought this file on Etsy. I did not feel confident in my own ability to create this file since this is a project I've never made before, and she sells this as a product in her Etsy shop. I've seen several people sell these in their Etsy shops or their online businesses, and I know that they are really popular and they have a really good profit margin. So if you are a handmade business owner, this is a fun design to learn how to make and sell, and we are going to do it today. We're going to be referring back to our instructions as we go for the cutting and the assembly of this, and there are several materials you're going to need today that are out of the norm, so let's talk through those before we put our file in the Glowforge app. The first thing you're going to need today is wood. I bought mine on Amazon, and I bought a pack of 12 by 20 sheets of wood, and mine are 0.125 inches thick, so the Glowforge Aura should have no problem cutting them. But if you purchase this same file from Hydrangea Creations Co. that I did, the file comes with different instructions for different thicknesses of wood, and even for two different sizes of this project depending on how you plan to cut your wood out, which is really nice. I'm going to be doing 0.125 inch thickness of wood. This is what my wood looks like. We are ready to cut. You're also going to need several different kinds of clamps. So let's go through that for just a second. And that's going to make setting this up and gluing all the pieces together a lot simpler, and it's going to make our end product look a lot cleaner and straighter and aligned. So the clamps are really important. I think that it will be a task of patience if you don't have any clamps to use. So I highly recommend getting those before starting this project. You can find them on Amazon, and I've linked in the description the ones that I purchased for this project. Okay, there are 3 different kinds of clamps you're going to want to use for this project that are really going to help us align everything and assemble our box here in the end. The first kind you're going to need is just a small plastic spring clamp set. These are the easiest to find on Amazon. They're really inexpensive and they come in a large pack. The second kind of clamp you need are 4 to 6 hand clamps that can clamp 3 inches wide. They look like this. Again, I bought the Amazon Basics brand. They get really good reviews. They're cost effective. That's what we're going to go with today. And then the third kind of clamp are 3 long bar clamps that can clamp 2 feet wide. And those look like this. Again, I've linked in the description the exact ones that I bought. I chose a cost-effective option that still had good reviews. So we are playing with some more heavy-duty equipment today than we usually do on our crafty channel, but this is going to be a really good end result, a really professional-looking product, and I'm excited to jump right into it. You're also going to need wood glue for this project. Again, it's linked in the description of this video. This is what I chose because it's waterproof and it's suitable for exterior or interior use. And then we've got some optional materials today as well. I'm going to walk you through how to incorporate these into the project that I make, but everything that we've talked about up to this point is what you need to create the flower box and assemble it. So if that's your goal, you are done with materials. I, however, am also adding white chalk paint because I'm going to paint my entire box white. This is linked in the description of this video as well. Let's dive into it. So we've talked about all of our materials, and now we're going to jump straight into the Glowforge app, get our file aligned correctly, and start printing using our pass-through slot on the Glowforge Aura, and referring to our directions that we have here from Hydrangea Creations Co., which is, again, where I bought this file from. I did have to put this file into Inkscape and do some splitting of it to make it a true pass-through project for the Glowforge Aura. Some files that you buy that are pass-through projects, if they're designed with the Aura in mind, they might already have these cuts in place. This one did not because it's a pass-through project designed more for like the Glowforge Pro series. So I did have to make it a pass-through project in Inkscape myself by creating those cut lines. And if you're interested in learning how to do that part, you can refer to the separate video I've made on that process that is over over on my page. It's not a complicated process, but it's a tedious process. And I really wanted to show it in its entirety. So I made the decision to create that as a separate video so that you can refer to that, understand that process, and really get it. If you're here just to learn how to make this project, I didn't want you to have to sit through that part of it. So we're gonna go on with the making of this project, but if you wanna know how to turn any SVG file into a pass-through project for the Glowforge Aura, head over to that video and watch it first, and then come back over here and we'll make this flower box together. So with all that being said, let's hop over to the computer and get our file ready to print. Okay friends, we are over here on the computer now. You can see almost nothing, and that is because we don't have any wood in our Glowforge Aura yet, so everything is just kind of like black and brown, which is hard to see. But I do want to show you the very quick steps we're going to take to make sure everything is set up appropriately for our pass-through project. So if I highlight this right here, this is our first sheet of wood. We have 3 sheets of wood we're cutting today, and all of them are 12 by 20. So they fit perfectly width-wise into our Aura, but lengthwise they're going to pass through the slot because they're going to be longer. And so we're cutting our front of our Polaroid box here along with the bottom. And then we have our second sheet of wood right here, which is the back of our project, along with a little score line right here that we're going to indicate in a second, and the top of our project. And then on our third sheet of wood right here, we have our sides as well as these little inset pieces that will be on the back and front, and we have them labeled so they don't get mixed up. We also have 2 little scrap pieces down here that we're not going to use, but we're going to cut them anyway just in case we need them. So with that being said, let's tell the Glowforge what each of these pieces are so that we can make sure it's cut appropriately. And also just a quick note, if something is hanging off your print bed, the Glowforge will automatically ignore it. So you don't have to worry about like getting rid of these pieces right here temporarily and bringing them back in. You don't have to do any of that if it's not sitting on your print bed or not overlapping your print bed. The Glowforge Aura will automatically ignore it. So with that being said, I did go ahead and select my material up here. It is medium basswood hardwood. That is what I'm cutting with. The way I indicated that, because this is not proof grade material, is I went over to the Glowforge website to see the thickness of their medium basswood hardwood, and it is the same as the basswood that I purchased online, so I'm gonna use that cut setting today. I do have one score line, and that is this inset piece right here. So I'm gonna ungroup my second piece, and then I'm gonna zoom in if it will let me. Oh, that was too much. I'm gonna take these 2 pieces right here, and I'm going to let Glowforge know that those are actually score lines. So I'm gonna select them from our side panel here and select to score those. And then the only other thing I wanna do is grab the little back and front right here. So I'm gonna ungroup this and grab my little back and front, and I'm gonna tell the Glowforge to actually ignore those because those are just for my reference. We don't want to cut those at all. I just have them there so that I know which pieces go with the back and which pieces go with the front, because believe it or not, they are not the same size. So we've told the Glowforge what we're doing. We have set our material settings. So now we're ready to go ahead and put our wood into our Glowforge and start cutting. I do just want to show you really fast though. You can see right here that we do have our pass-through enabled. So what I mean by that is I did separate out this file in Glowforge, and this is where we're going to be connecting. So the first thing we're going to be cutting is these 2 pieces right here, and then we're going to utilize our pass-through slot to slide our file and line it up and cut these 2 pieces. So I did split this in half so that it would be ready to be utilized with the pass-through slot. So let's go put our wood in our Glowforge and let's get on with the print. Okay, so we have our Glowforge Aura here. Let's grab our first sheet of wood and I'll show you how to put it in the pass-through slot. Okay, here's our first sheet of wood. So all we're gonna do is open up our pass-through slot on the side here. It's just a simple little notch that you slide down. And then we're just gonna ease our wood into our pass-through slot and make sure everything is lined up. We actually should have probably gone in the other way. So we're just gonna slide it in. We're gonna have a little piece hanging out the side, and that is totally fine because that's what we're gonna cut next. Okay, I do just want to show you really quick how this looks from the top down. So you can see we have our wood in there, and then it sticks out the side of the pass-through slot, and you can actually just slide it in and out directly from here. It should be a pretty snug fit, so don't feel like it's just gonna slide around, but you do want to make sure it's pretty straight so that when you are pushing it through the pass-through slot later, it's easier to align everything. Okay, so you can see here that the Glowforge has updated the internal camera, and it's showing what it is going to cut in orange here, and it's showing that it's not going to cut these red pieces here because they're on the outside of the print bed. So because this one overlaps onto the outside, it's going to ignore it, which is exactly what we want, because this will be the second part of our pass-through project here, and this will be the first, and this is what is getting cut right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and click ready, and we're gonna let this go ahead and do its thing. Okay, so this first cut is gonna take 13 minutes and 28 seconds. So let's go over to our Glowforge and press the flashing go button. And we can see it's gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, so we've cut the first half of our project now. So now we're going to gently ease this to the other side of the pass-through slot, making sure we stay aligned here. And you may have to open the lid of your Glowforge and kind of push it along here. It can be a little tough. Notice that the Glowforge did not cut this line right here, and that's exactly what we wanted. That's why we set up the file that way in Inkscape, because now we're gonna have it cut the other end of this front of our box here. So we're really pleased with no cut right there. That's exactly how we wanted it, and that's why we don't see our design just falling out of the Glowforge like it would if this was a full cut. So we're just gonna keep pushing our wood along until we see the other edge here. And then we're gonna align it so it's mostly straight. We do want to be able to get the rest of it on the print bed here. And you can just see I'm just pushing it up against the edge of the pass-through slot so I know it's lined up correctly. And now we're ready to close our lid and make sure our file is ready to cut the other half of this project for our true pass-through project with the Glowforge Aura. Okay, we're gonna hop back on the computer really quick. I'm gonna show you how we're gonna move our lines over so that we are now cutting the second half of our pass-through project. So we have our piece right here that we've already cut, and we can just move that off the print bed. Again, remember with the Glowforge Aura and the Glowforge software, if we move it off the print bed, the Glowforge knows to ignore that. And then we're gonna highlight the other half of this piece of wood here, and we're just gonna drag it in. And this is where it can be a little bit tricky, but you are going to want to line up your cut. So we're just gonna look at this really quick. Looks like we need to move our wood over a little bit more so that we can actually fit it all on this piece of wood. So I'm gonna go move it over just a little bit more, and then we should be good to go. The other thing we wanna do is set our focus. While we're waiting for our camera to update here, I'm gonna click these three buttons and click Set Focus. And I want it to focus right here on this spot, because that is where we want to make sure the camera is fully focused so that we know exactly if we're lining it up correctly. Because the last thing we want to happen is for us to align this second half of the cut and then it not cut all the way through because our old line isn't aligned with our new line. So we're going to set the focus really quick, let it do its alignment, and then we're going to go back in and make sure this is matching up. We're going to move this piece so that it fits on our print bed here. Remember, that piece is not going to be connected, so we're not super concerned. It looks like we do have a little bit of an angle that we're going to have to work with here. I think I must have put it in just a little bit off. I'm going to set the focus one more time, this time on this top piece, and we're going to see if that helps. You definitely want to be able to align both of your pieces. I'm feeling a little worried that it's not lining up, so we're just going to set the focus again. We're going to get this right. There we go. Okay, that looks a little better. So now I'm just gonna make sure my line is barely touching. We are a little bit crooked. I saw it just a little when I was watching it cut the first time, and I really don't wanna have to recut it. So we're gonna see if we can't just like line this up on our own. So I'm gonna zoom way in on this, and we're gonna look for where our actual cut is, not where just the little like singed part of the wood is. Definitely think this needs to be a little bit tilted. I'm a little scared to tilt this, but I think we're gonna have to get it to line up. So I'm gonna tilt it away. Okay, it's not aligning perfectly like I wanted it to. So we're just gonna have to try it, see if it works. I'm gonna unrotate this. Okay, I think that's about as good as we're gonna get. It's a little bit off, but I think it's gonna be okay in the end. We'll find out. Let's press print. Okay, we're ready to do the second half. So I'm gonna press go, and we're gonna let it do its thing. We can see our first half is already cut up there, and we've utilized our pass-through slot over here to now cut our second half. So we're gonna let it cut, and we are gonna cross our fingers. first cut is done. Here's what it looks like. You can see that it got a little bit off in the alignment right here and here, but it's just barely off. It's nothing that a little bit of sandpaper is not gonna fix. And this is still gonna hook up perfectly with the rest of our images that we're gonna be cutting out here in just a second. So I'm not too worried about it. If yours is just a slight bit off like this and you have a little notch, just take some sandpaper to it, even it out. Once we connect all these pieces with wood glue and paint them, it shouldn't be an issue. So don't stress too much about that. We're gonna move on to our second and third sheets of wood now in the same way that we did before, starting with one half of the pass-through slot, sliding through, hooking up that second half, cutting it, and moving on. I'm not gonna show you each piece step by step because it is just a repeat of exactly what we did before. We're just gonna be moving things around on our Glowforge app here so that whatever's on the print bed is what we're cutting. We're gonna do that for the rest of the sheets and then we're gonna come back and do the assembly. I am gonna just show you the Glowforge part really quick of this second setup because I think that's the most confusing part. Okay, so our print bed is open right now, so what you're seeing in the camera is actually not what's really there, but we are gonna move that cut off of our print bed. I'm going to grab our first half of our first page and move it up here, and then the second half I'm gonna move it up right there with it, and then we're gonna grab our second sheet here all together and move it up onto our print bed. This is our one where we have our score line that we need to cut. So I'm just going to get us all lined up here. We want to be as far over as we can possibly be so we can save some wood there. That looks good. And then we're gonna move these extra pieces off to the edge because those we will be bringing in shortly. I do just want to make sure we're quickly lined up properly. I'm gonna try something a little bit different this time and I'll let you know how it goes, but my idea is that instead of dragging it, I'm just gonna bump it over with my arrow keys so that we can keep everything lined up a little bit better, and hopefully that will help make it a little bit easier to make the cut line up, and then maybe I won't have to use sandpaper at all this time. So I'm gonna try that. I've got it lined up perfectly right now, and it's ignoring all this stuff on the left-hand side because it's in red and it's hanging off the print bed a little bit. But I'm gonna go ahead and cut this first part, then I'll slide through the pass-through slot, and then instead of dragging over like we did the last time, I'm just gonna arrow over, and that way everything stays lined up vertically, which will hopefully make it a little bit easier to cut. So I actually am gonna film it this time. We're gonna film it a second time through. We're gonna see if we can get an even cleaner cut this time. So I'm gonna go put my wood in and then we're gonna get started. Okay, so again, remember how you use the pass-through slot is I'm literally just going to slide it through all the way to the other end. I am making sure it hits the other side of the pass-through slot so I can make sure everything stays aligned and even. So there's little grooves on either side of the pass-through slot, and I'm making sure it's bumping the top edge of that pass-through slot so that there's no crookedness happening. So that's just like a little tip to help you out. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second, but I'm gonna just slide it back a little bit because we wanna maximize our use of our wood here. We are all aligned. Let me show you what that looks like really quick. So what I mean by that is, you can see we have these little grooves right here where the pass-through slot starts, and then there's another one on this side where the pass-through slot starts. So I'm just making sure the wood is bumped all the way up against that north edge there on both sides so that everything is even and we don't have to worry about whether it's straight or not. We know it's straight because it's hitting the top edge of that pass-through slot on both sides. So now we're ready to close the lid, and let's let this one cut. So we're here on the computer first. We're gonna set up our file correctly so it's ready to cut the second half. We just wanna grab that first half and use our arrow keys to just slide it off to the edge there. And then we're gonna grab our second half and we're gonna slide it with the arrow keys onto our sheet. So once it's on there, we're going to go over and move our wood through the pass-through slot, and then we're gonna come back to the computer and make sure everything is aligned. So let's do that really fast. So we're gonna open up the Glowforge, and we are going to just push through from this side. It's a little bit of a rougher process than you might expect. And we're just gonna slide it all the way through until we're just barely touching the top of our pass-through slot with the other side. We're gonna push everything up to the top as far as we can so that it's nice and straight. And then we're just gonna close it. And we're gonna let our camera update on our Glowforge app, and then we're gonna make sure everything's aligned. Okay, so now we're gonna check our file one more time. We do need to nudge it over some more now that we've moved it. But again, this time we're not gonna slide it. We're gonna try and see if we can get a cleaner cut if we literally just nudge it over until it is barely touching. I'm not gonna move it up or down at all, only left to right. And then I'm gonna get it where it just barely touches, We're gonna see if that's right. So now we're gonna click print. This is a little bit of a trial and error process to get it lined up. I know some people use registration marks when they do this to help, but in my experience, making the registration marks still has the same amount of room for error. So in this way, we're just gonna try and get it as lined up as we possibly can, knowing that it might be a little bit off. And as long as it's just a little bit off and not a lot off, then we can use sandpaper to even everything out, and this will still hook up perfectly, aligned to be a pretty little flower box. Okay, so it looks like we're good here. I do kind of think it needs to come over just one more click though, so we're gonna do that. I think that that's better. It says it's gonna take 6 minutes, so we're gonna go ahead and press go. Let this thing cut the second half. Okay, we are done cutting every layer of this pass-through project, so now we're gonna take our last piece of wood out and we're gonna go assemble our design. We're also gonna take a quick second to talk about some quick tips to help you have a more successful pass-through project with the Glowforge Aura. As we've seen, it can be a little bit tricky and it definitely is a manual process. So let's get this piece of wood out. I'll show you how to do that, and then we're gonna talk about some quick tips to make it more successful. Then we'll assemble our project. So to take your piece of wood out after you've done the second cut for your pass-through, you simply just slide it out the other end of your pass-through slot. You're gonna notice that it's definitely kind of sticky, like that pass-through slot is very thin and it's hard to pass the wood through, so you're gonna meet some resistance as you're trying to push it out the other side, and that's okay. Don't worry about messing up your Glowforge. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. Just push it out the other end. Once you have it successfully out, you can close your lid, grab your piece of wood, and go pop out your cut. Okay, we have officially cut all of our pieces of wood for this Glowforge Aura pass-through project. So you can see we've got a little rough edges here where the pass-through slot didn't do a perfect job. So I'm gonna take this super fine sanding sponge. It's the 3M brand. You can get it at any of your local hardware stores. And I'm just gonna sand this down until we have a nice clean cut. Okay, it's officially time to assemble our project. So you can see I have my back piece laid out here. The first thing we're gonna do is lay our thin long and thin short back pieces on the back inside of our score lines right here. And if you're like me, your score lines aren't perfect, so we're gonna be a little bit liberal with how we attach these, and I'll show you how to make sure you do it just right. The first thing we wanna do is lay everything out, making sure it looks good. So I'm lining up my thin, long back pieces first, and I'm doing it on the inside of the score line. And then I'm taking the short pieces and sliding them in again on the inside of the score line, making sure everything is seamless and touching. So I'm gonna do the same with the top piece here. And then I'm just gonna finagle it a little bit so everything is sitting flush with each other, kind of poking things around here until we get it how we want it. That looks great. Once you have it in place, the thing you want to do next is take your long side pieces and just lay them vertically and make sure you have enough space for them to sit flush on your back panel without hanging off the edge. As long as you have space to do that, you are good to start gluing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, without moving any other pieces, I'm going to flip up this one long piece in the back. We want to do our long pieces first. And then I'm just gonna add some glue here. I have a baby wipe with me because this glue that I use gets kind of messy. So I'm gonna lay it down, pushing it up against where we just laid down here, pressing down, making sure we have a nice firm finish. This is also where you can use your clamps to really hold everything into place. I'm also gonna use a baby wipe to wipe all the excess up here that I've made a mess with. Okay, now that we have it secured where we want it, I'm just gonna take my clamp. I'm gonna very gently lift here and clamp that in place so we don't have any movement. This is where if you have a way to lift up your whole workspace, it would be good because it'll make it easier with your clamps. So I'm just gonna grab a couple books really quick and we're gonna use that to lift up our whole space here. Okay, I'm actually just gonna use some old magazines to keep this elevated. That's just gonna make it easier with our clamps. Okay, let's do the other long side now. So same as before, I'm just gonna flip it up. I'm gonna try not to make such a mess this time. I always forget how watery this glue is. This is already going so much better. This is also a brand new tube of glue, so double the mess. I'm gonna gently lay it down. I could never be a surgeon. Push it up against the other side here. Gently gonna nudge it into place first. I'm just gonna double check that I have enough width here for this to be flush, and I do, thank goodness. And then I'm gonna use my clamp to hold that piece of wood in place. Now I'm gonna take my baby wipe and just get some of this excess off right here. This is where really being patient, taking your time can really make a huge difference on your end product. Just gonna add another clamp up here, keep this top part nice and flush as well, and the same on this side. And then we're gonna do a little more glue cleanup here before we move on to these top pieces. A little more glue cleanup, and then we'll do our bottom pieces. And these ones should be really easy because you already aligned your side pieces, so no trouble there. Let's do our top and our bottom pieces now. These should fit really snug, so really don't be afraid to slide them in there. Make sure they're inside your score line. You don't want them to be on the outside because again, we have to have another piece sit flush with that. I'm gonna go ahead and do both, and I'm gonna clamp them. Kind of just using our score line as a guide to make sure everything looks straight. Also being careful that when you clamp, you're not really moving things too terribly much because it can be easy to let your clamp slide what you're doing and slide your little piece of wood, and we don't want that to happen. So after I clamp, I'm just making sure it's still in the right place and adjusting that clamp if I need to. So now I'm gonna take my little baby wipe again, clean up some of this excess glue, especially on these outer edges here where we have to fit another piece of wood. We don't want wood glue buildup to be what keeps our piece from sitting flush. That's our first step of gluing done. So we're gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna do the same thing to the sides and the top, and then we're gonna really start seeing this come together. Let's let this dry for a little while, and then we'll come back and we'll do the next step. Okay, we're on to the second step of our gluing process. So I'm gonna take my back piece here and just set it off to the side. It is still drying a bit, so we're gonna give it a good place to dry here. And we're gonna get on to the sides and the top and the bottom. The way this is gonna work, I've kind of already laid it out a little bit. Lay out your sides, and if you have like an ugly side to the wood because of how your Glowforge cut it, you want the ugly side facing up because that's not gonna be visible in our end product here. So ugly side facing up, and then grab your front thin long pieces. And what we're gonna do is, again, ugly side facing up, we're gonna align them with the edge of the top of our side, but align them with the long edge because you're gonna have some excess on the edges right here, you can see. And our goal actually is to align it center. So you can see how I've done it here. I've got it aligned flush with that top edge of the side, and then there's excess on the edges, the short edges of my side. However, I'm making sure that this long thin piece is centered along the side of each one, and that's exactly how we're about to glue these down. So without further ado, let's go ahead and glue it. We're gonna paint this in the end as well, so we're not too worried about the fact that our wood has some mistakes in it, because this is all gonna get painted. As I lay it down, I'm kind of moving it, making sure it's centered and flush at the same time. And then we're gonna let that sit for just a second before we come back and clamp it and clean off the excess glue. Same thing here, glue, glue, glue. Maybe you have a better nozzle for your glue and you're not making as much of a mess with these tiny, tiny thin pieces here. Centering it and making sure it's flush with that long edge. Gently pressing it down just a smidge. And then we're gonna come in and clamp it. I need one additional clamp, so I'm gonna go grab that really fast. All right, so I'm gonna clamp this guy and clean up some of that glue that's hanging off the edge, especially on our edges over here. You could also wait for this glue to dry and sand it down if you really have some issues. And then I'm gonna hang this off the edge over here so it can dry. Doing the same with this other piece, clamping it down, nice and firm. Still making sure we're centered though and flush, and then just cleaning up some of that extra glue that really wants to cause a problem. Hopefully your glue is a little cleaner than mine. All right, I'm gonna let that hang off the edge while it dries, and then we're gonna basically repeat that exact same process with the top and the bottom. Shout out to the Magnolia Journal for coming in clutch while we do this. We're doing the exact same thing we just did, but this time we're using the short, thin pieces, making sure we're centered with our top side here, and doing that again. Again, you're using your kind of ugly side for this. This is all gonna be inside of our flower box in the end. It's totally fine if this is a little bit ugly. Let's clamp her down. Clamping, cleaning up the little glue edge. All right, same thing with this one that has a ton of excess glue. I'm actually gonna get some of this glue off before I clamp it because I really made a mess with that one. We're gonna let those dry. I'm gonna get a new baby wipe for this next step, and then we're gonna be putting the back and the sides together. So this is the tricky step. The one we're about to do is a little bit tricky. This is where we're gonna use our bar clamps. We're gonna hope for the best. All right, we got our back piece. I'm a little afraid to take off We still need a little more drying time. I'm actually gonna let this dry for just a little bit longer because we really want those tiny thin pieces to be nice and secure before we do this next step. So let's be patient, let our glue dry, and then we'll come back and finish this up. Okay, our wood is officially dry. So now we're gonna remove all these hand clamps. Just set them off to the side, or in my case, throw them on the floor. And now we're gonna get to the action here. So now we're gonna be attaching the sides, the top, and the bottom to the back of our flower box. So what you're gonna need for this step is your wood glue again, and you're also gonna need your bar clamps. So this, if you don't have bar clamps, you can do this with your hands, but I'm gonna tell you that it's gonna be a lot easier if you do the bar clamps. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up our sides, and we're gonna go ahead and get ready to attach this, because we're really gonna wanna attach all of these pieces pretty quickly. Okay, so we're gonna apply glue all around the back edge of our base, and also on the sides of our sides, so that the top and bottom can fit on here as well. I'm gonna clamp this on for just another minute here. Looks like we have a little bit of bowing happening. I'm gonna let that sit for another minute or so while I get everything set up. So I've got my bar clamp ready. I'm gonna go ahead and get my other one ready too. And you do have a little bit of time. Obviously this wood glue doesn't dry instantly, so don't stress too much, but we do wanna move kind of quickly for this part. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay down my glue along every edge here, every seam. Once again, trying not to make a mess. Probably gonna fail at that, that's okay. And then we're gonna put some glue on our little edges right here. And this is gonna get a little messy. We can clean it up after the fact, that is okay. All right, let's do it. So first I'm gonna set these pieces down, making sure everything stays flush. And I'm gonna hopefully get this to sit upright for just a second so I can attach the bottom piece here. I think I put glue on the wrong side. I meant to put glue on these sides. Okay, you wanna put glue on the edges of the short sides, not the long sides. So I'm gonna have to wipe all that glue off, that's okay. You're making a very big mess, but it's okay. Okay, and then once you have one fitted together, nice and snug, you're gonna wanna attach your bar clamp and get that good and clamped on. Just get glue on the insides of this. Just getting glue everywhere, just getting glue all over the place. We're gonna press with our hands first, and then we're gonna get our bar clamp in there. Let's clamp this guy on. You may have to finagle the parts together a little bit. I'm gonna wipe out this glue from the inside now, and then we're actually gonna go ahead and attach our top piece. So as you can see, I have a little bit of bowing happening right here, so I'm about to try and release some pressure to hopefully kind of adjust that little spot right there. And I'm just gonna make sure this is sitting really nice and flush here. Okay. Let's put our top piece on. I'm gonna try to find my prettier side here, make sure everything's gonna line up. It's gonna be so cute. Okay, now we're just gonna do glue all along the edges here. And this is where you're gonna want something heavy, like some paint cans or some books to lay down on top, because we also wanna apply downward pressure to make sure these pieces really get good and stuck on the bottom, or stuck to the back of our design as well. So I'm just making a huge mess with this wood glue today. That's okay, that is okay. In a second, we're gonna do a little bit of cleanup, but I wanna get this on first. All right, so I'm just gonna press it down, and then I'm gonna go get something heavy to place on the edges here to really make sure this gets good and stuck. I found something even better. I'm going to use these honey jars and this coffee to really let it all stay. So now you just need to let it sit. You've got your bar clamps on, you've got your top weights, everything should be really sitting nice and snug together. The next thing you can do while you're waiting for this to dry is really quickly get a baby wipe or something and kind of get some of that excess glue up if you're like me and you made a mess. So I'm gonna do that really fast. Just getting the glue off of my desk here. And if you have any running down the sides of your project, you can wipe it up now, or when it's totally dry, you can just use sandpaper to sand it off. And if you're gonna paint yours, like I'm gonna paint mine, you won't even be able to tell once you sand it down. I am checking to make sure there's not a ton of glue on the inside here. Just gonna clean that up really fast. Just trying to make life for future me a little bit easier. Okay, everything looks clean enough. So we're gonna let this sit for a little while, probably about 30 minutes, let everything get good and set, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna paint this, and then this project is done. Okay, this has been drying for a little bit, so we're gonna go ahead and remove our very fancy heavy weights. And I'm going to just check it to make sure everything is secure. So I'm going to gently remove the clamps Alrighty, so now you technically have a finished product that you could hang on your wall. You can go ahead and put flowers in this. You could customize this however you wanted with letters on the front in vinyl or in wood using Velcro or magnets to attach it, and you can make it interchangeable. I'm gonna make a separate video where I show you how I put magnet letters on the front of mine so that you can change this out for any season or holiday. You can attach any sort of hanger on the back of this too to hang it on your wall, and then the flowers just go down in it and stick out. I'll show you that in just a second, but what we are gonna do is paint ours. I have some rough edges here and I don't like this just wood color, so we're gonna paint ours white. I'm gonna do that really quick now that it's dry, and then I'll come back and show you the finished product. Okay, I have just finished painting it and letting it dry for a little bit. I'll probably let it dry for a little longer before hanging it on the wall, but here is our finished product. As you can see, we can put floral foam down in the bottom in the crevice down here and put flowers in it. We can put letters on the front with vinyl. We could put letters on the front with Velcro to make it interchangeable, or even magnets to make it interchangeable. This is a really versatile piece. This is great for events. This is great to hang in your home and change out seasonally. I love this project. I think it's such a great pass-through project for the Glowforge Aura, and it's something that I just know I'm going to use in my home for a long time. So I hope you didn't have too much trouble with today's project. I hope you really enjoyed it and you learned how to use the pass-through slot on your Glowforge Aura. Let me know what you're doing with yours in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss a thing, because we do crafty tutorials, tips, and tricks on the Glowforge, Canva, and Cricut here every single week, and I would love for you to be a part of it. If you're not already following me, do follow me on other social platforms at It's Laura Lambert. Shoot me a DM or a comment. Let me know what you're making. I would love to connect with you. I'm gonna go put some flowers in this guy and hang her up on the wall. So until next time, happy crafting.